guys, welcome back to Study Break. I have a confession to make. I just came back from happy hour, so I needed a little bit of liquid courage to film this episode, but that's not the reason why I was at happy hour. I was catching up with one of my friends. And speaking of friends, actually, that is the topic of this week's episode. It is on friendships and relationships, because who better qualified to talk about this than some girl on the internet, but I digress. So for today, because I already ate dinner, so I will just be having some water in my Love Shack Fancy Stanley. First, I want to say thank you to all of you that supported me with my first episode, that listened, that wrote me messages saying how proud you were of me, how you wish me luck, and I wanted to say truly from the bottom of my heart thank you, because it makes me so happy that I'm able enough to have a platform and be vulnerable with you guys to, talk about my experiences and see if maybe some of you could resonate, which I didn't think so many people resonated with my last episode, but I greatly appreciate those of you that reached out and told me that it did. So truly it means the absolute world to me. Because the topic of today's video is friendships and relationships, I'm going to start off with friendships first. I'm going to leave the juicy bit till the last end because I feel like being evil today. I feel like making you guys wait a little bit, teasing you guys just a little bit. I feel blessed enough that I have a good support group around me. I feel like I was very patient with building my friend group. I unfortunately have had a lot of friendships getting up to this point that didn't work out. And we're going to talk about some of the friendships that didn't work out and some of the friendships that did work out and what I learned from it. One of the first people that actually reached out to me and said that they were proud of me and that they support me in all of it, and this is the one part where I do feel kind of okay name dropping, is my friend Audrey. Audrey, I love you so much. Thank you so much for your support. And my friend Mia and my friend Bia. You guys genuinely are the world's best friends that I could have, and I don't know what I would do without you guys. But this isn't a friendship appreciation video. But yeah. So I feel like also when I was reflecting and I was journaling and I was thinking about how I'm going to introduce this video, how I'm going to talk about this, I thought about the qualities that some of my friends have and how I've learned to also fill my cup with my friends and also be a good friend and not drain theirs. And I'll explain a little bit what I mean. So basically, I've had friendships in the past that I have realized that it was a lot of me reaching out to them. It was very one-sided. It was very much just me reaching out to them to go have plans, to go have a chat, or it'd be the other way around where, well, not the other way around, but it'd be in a different way where they would get mad at me for X or Y reasons, or they just wouldn't be able to communicate well. And granted, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I'm a perfect friend. I have had some communication issues in the past. I am normally sometimes a very reserved person when it comes to confrontation. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any means. I'm just saying that in friendships, it is very, very important to find your people that support you and lift you up and listen to you. But at the same time, it is also important that you support and uplift them. I truly, again, I resonate with the saying that goes, I really have to start learning how these sayings actually go if I'm going to mention them on here, but I promise by the next episode I will. There's this saying that goes, it takes a village, but to have a village, you also have to be a villager. And I 100,000% agree with that. And I feel like I've also made mistakes in the past. I really dislike that. It took me to that point to realize how, why, not how or why, but, that I should be a better friend to my friends. And I realized the mistakes that I had been making with some of my friends, too, in, other friendships. And I, reached out to them afterwards, and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry if I've, offended you before, or, hey, I'm sorry if if it felt like I wasn't there for you before. So it took that, self-awareness and that, really looking in the mirror type of thing to realize if I want to have a village, I need to be a villager. And I haven't been as good of a villager as I have been in the past. So, at the same time, while I have made mistakes, I feel like there's also, through all of this, I had a learning curve or a learning period where I realized I also need to realize what I'm looking for in a friendship. And I'm going to talk about the story in a very vague uh, way because this story involves a lot of people and I don't want to offend anybody. Um, and so I was studying abroad in France, and it was one of my friend's birthdays, and towards the end of my semester, she asked, "Hey guys, like I want to go on a trip, all of us together, some of my other friends, because I'm also part of a sorority, which I will talk about what that's like in an episode in the future, so stay tuned for that." But she asked some of my other friends in the sorority that were also studying abroad. She goes, "I want to do a trip of all of us together." And so I realized, I was like, oh my god, yes, like I will do it, like I want to go. And I will say though, in a group trip, you do have to learn to be very flexible, and I didn't realize this until like the planning stages of this. Like I kind of knew, but I didn't realize that I was the one that had to be like really, really flexible, which in the end didn't end up mattering anyways, but that's not the point of the story. So we go on this trip, to the southern coast of France, and we're having a great time. My friend it was her birthday. I love her so much, and so I was very excited to go and celebrate her. This was her birthday trip. This was like all about like celebrating her, but like also like in a group trip, like if you're also planning one, you have to also like think about like if you're going to a destination that a lot of people haven't been to, you also have to like allow them. And I'm not saying that this was like something that happened on the trip. I'm just saying like in general, like my thoughts like afterward was you also have to like give everybody kind of like a like wiggle room to, if they want to go do an activity, let them go do that activity. If you don't want to do it, then go do something on your own. Like something I've learned from solo traveling is that it's okay to do things on your own. And like I know that it could seem very scary, but sometimes it really is like a blessing in disguise. And so while we were on this trip, I realized that one of my friends, she, as much as I loved her, there were points in the trip where I realized some of these girls, like maybe they don't want to travel with me because maybe I'm very type A, and a lot of my friends are very type B, so they probably didn't like that I was very much like I adhered to a certain itinerary. I didn't tell anybody to adhere to that exact itinerary because, like I said, you have to give everybody some wiggle room to like go explore on their own and everything. But I realized through all of this that the trip was actually very draining for me, and it was also very draining for like a lot of other girls too on the trip because I feel like there was a lot of miscommunications that were happening, and as a group, we couldn't really come together to talk about these miscommunications. And communication is something that is super, super important. And I feel like if you don't have that in a relationship and a friendship, it's not gonna work because people aren't mind readers, and nor should you expect them to be mind readers. If you I have had talks with my friends, with my closest friends, and they've said to me, Karen, like I fear that like I sometimes get really scared to tell you something because I fear how you're going to react. And I told them, I was like, listen, I promise you. And this was like during the period that I realized I needed to be a better villager. Um, I realized, I told them, I was like, you know what, from the future going on forward, I promise you I'm not going to react bad if you tell me, if you come and voice these things to me. If you tell me, like, maybe I did something to offend you and I didn't realize. Maybe I said something that, like, rubbed you the wrong way. Maybe I wasn't there for you because I had a different commitment and you didn't tell me and I felt bad. Like, stuff like that. And so my friends, my closest friends have in the future, like, have always said this stuff to me. And so I feel like communication really is the basis of, like, a good working, like, friendship and relationship. But at the same time, I'm very much, like, a pet peeve of mine is when I don't know like, when somebody's keeping information from me. Whether it's good or bad. Like, unless, like, I've told my friends this, I'm like, unless I tell you not to tell me something, I want you to tell me because I don't want to look stupid in front of other people and be like, oh, you didn't know? Like, you didn't know that X person said this about you? And that's something that happened a couple of times in my college career where I've had to have very uncomfortable conversations with people where I'm like, I heard that you said XYZ about me, and I'm not angry because maybe I said something to offend you, but I want to understand your side of the story. Because at the same time, I also realize that for every like situation, there are two sides to every story, and it's very, very important to remember that. So I always try very hard to, even if like somebody does not talk well about me, because again, like this has happened a couple of times in the past. I either let it slide depending if I'm like close to the person, and I'm like, I will just like distance myself and take my time, because I'm like, if you're talking bad about me, you're not reaching out like to me to go hang out. I can very much read the hint that you don't want to be my friend, and I get that. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and everybody's not my cup of tea either. Like, I totally understand. Sometimes relationships and friendships just don't mesh well. Um, but it's more so a matter of like you telling me these things. So I have had previous conversations with other people where I've had to exit out of friendships before because I feel like they didn't, like, I don't want to say serve me, but I feel like they didn't fill my cup in a way where it was just there was nothing positive coming out of it for either that person or for me, because I wasn't reaching out because they weren't reaching out, and then they were talking bad about me and I didn't know, and when I found out I didn't want to talk to them, and so it's all just like a really, really uncomfortable situation that could have been avoided with a lot of communication. um like, I also have had friendships in the past that like I distanced myself for like a point in time because I didn't feel comfortable with like the people that they were voicing their opinions to, or the people that they were hanging out with, or because I had a fear that like something that I would say would get leaked to them, you know. But let me tell you how I fixed that. Communication. I talked to these people and I said to them, I was like, you know, at the time I didn't feel comfortable. Like, I don't, like, it's not my place to tell you who to be friends with. But at the same time, to protect my own peace, I had to take a step back from the friendship because I fear that, like, anything that I would have said to you would have gotten leaked to this person and I didn't want this other person to know. So, that's what I have to say on friendships. But regarding relationships, I feel like I've learned a lot in my previous, like, in my previous relationships, where I feel like, I don't want to say I was going for potential, but I feel like us women, and I don't want to, actually, no, I don't want to speak for all women, but for me personally, I feel like there was a time where I would see the potential and I would, you know what, get locked down just for on the potential, where I would see, you know, like, this person would be really good for a relationship and I feel like we mesh well, and I feel like they like the same things that I like, and you know, check their boxes and they check my boxes, and you know, all that stuff that like you say to yourself like when you're thinking about dating somebody. And in my previous relationships I've realized sometimes that is just not enough. Sometimes checking 9 out of 10 boxes is not enough. Sometimes checking all the boxes is not enough. Like, and sometimes just feeling like you like the person, like just feeling the spark, is not just enough. Like, as a college student, when I came in to college, I had previously had one relationship, and it was a long distance relationship. So I didn't, and it was like during the times of COVID, so I barely saw the person that I was dating at the time. And also because I was in a relationship with someone that our relationship would be classified as an LGBTQ relationship, and my parents didn't approve of it at the time. And again, whole other video. But because of those reasons, I couldn't see that person, so I didn't really feel like I had a relationship to begin with. And so when I went to college, I told this person, I was like, listen, I think we would have been really good together if we would see each other, or if we had like somewhat of a physical relationship, but we haven't had it since like they had to like leave the school that I was in high school for personal reasons. And I told them, I was like, listen, I just don't think it's working. And they agreed. They were like, you know what, I agree with you, and it was a mutual split. And then when I came to college, I was ready to, you know, like, go to the frat parties, you know, take on that wild life of, like, partying Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I did. I did, freshman and sophomore year. And while it was fun, I also, like, it gets tiring. Like, I realized that while it was fun to go to these parties and, talk to, the people were where I went and, kiss a couple of people and talk to a couple, like that was fun, but I realized it wasn't fulfilling me in the end. And I realized that just feeling that spark of like, oh, they were physically attracted to me and I was physically attracted to them wasn't enough. I realized later on that I wanted something more. And then that's when I started getting into my previous relationship. And in my previous relationship, I remember before I got into it, I was like, I want to date somebody, I want to have a partner, I want to have a relationship. I didn't really think, okay, but what are the standards of the relationship I want? I feel like it's very important, and I've learned this like now, like I don't say now, but like as of recently, to have a clear mindset, like a clear like I want XYZ in this in a relationship. I want to feel supported. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel happy. And like not to say that I wasn't happy in that relationship. I was. And granted, that relationship had its own issues. Um and you know, I needed to take a water break for that one. It had its own issues, and it taught me a lot of valuable lessons in what I want in a relationship and what I don't want in a relationship. And I realized towards the end, as I'm maturing and I'm evolving, you grow out of certain relationships. Like I didn't want the relationship that's like, you know, I was a sophomore, he was a freshman in college. Both of us were like, we're pretty young and we were both like having kind of that like puppy love that they all talk about, like we would go out and like we would be very PDA. It would get to the point where I remember it was like around like our 6 months, I believe, and it was my birthday. And my family planned a whole trip to Mexico for my birthday, and I invited him on this trip, and he came with. And, it got to the point where my family was like, Karen, like, we get that you love him, but, like, enough. Para, ya basta, no más. Oh, God. Anyways, and as much as I loved, all of that, I also realized I don't want certain things in the relationship. I realized I needed to be with somebody that has been with other people, that has been in previous relationships. And in that relationship, my ex, he hadn't been with anybody before me. And at that point, I didn't care, but I realized later on that it was very important for me, personally, towards the end. Because there were a lot of things that I was okay with, like, like, the sidewalk rule. Like, I have to teach him the sidewalk rule. I have to, like, teach him that, like, to, like, hold open the door for me. Which, like, I know. Bare minimum. And I remember in the early stages of our relationship, I also, like, kept telling him, I was like, why don't you write me love letters? Like, I'm the type of person, and it's something that, like, a lot of people seem to not realize about me. I'm the person that will always value a handwritten love letter more than any expensive gift. Because I'm a hopeless romantic like that, okay? And I remember there was also, like, arguments that we had, too, that were, like, very, very superficial, actually. But, like, for example, I practically live my life online. And he didn't. And I remember I would get, like, kind of, like, bothered by the fact that, like, for example, it was our 6 months, and I had to tell him to post. Or I had to basically create the post, and I would have to go into his account and physically press post for that. Like, I feel like our love languages at the time didn't mesh well together. And we tried really hard for it to do, Like, I think, I don't want to bash on him. I really don't. Like, I feel like there were parts of the relationship where he was a good boyfriend and I was a good girlfriend. And then there were parts in the relationship where I was a really bad girlfriend and he was a really good boyfriend or a really bad boyfriend, It's all a learning curve, especially, I remember, because this was his first relationship, so pretty much everything was a learning curve. And I was kind of okay with that, but at the same time, I was like, I kind of got tired of having to teach him everything, of having to, like, hold his hand for everything. And at the time, like I said, I didn't really care, but I still, like, think that I shouldn't have to do that in the future. Like, I don't want to have to tell you to get me flowers on the first date. I don't want to have to tell you to open my door. I don't want to have to tell you to write me good morning messages. And, like, I get that this all sounds very trivial and very superficial, or it might not. These are just all, like, you know, the little things in life, you know? So, and afterwards, after we broke up, um, I tend to turn to travel as a coping mechanism, and so I said to myself, you know what? I have the money for a brand deal to go, because at the time I had just finished a brand deal with Google. Um, I had the money to go to Copenhagen, and it was something that I was a little sad on the trip, obviously, because I was just coming off of a breakup, but I was overcome by this feeling of like, I feel very independent, and it's like a different type of independence than like, you know, moving for college. It was the type of independence that's like, I don't have to tell anybody where I'm going. I don't have to tell anybody why I'm posting this. I don't have to make up excuses as to why I'm posting a bikini photo. Even though I will say though in that relationship that never happened, but I know it's something that a lot of girls like sometimes they struggle with in their relationships. And if there's one piece of advice that I could give you regarding relationships is don't settle. Have a very clear mindset of what you want in the relationship and don't settle for anything less because you are worth the effort. You are worth the flowers. You are worth the going the extra mile. You are worth being loved and being appreciated and being cared for. And it goes both ways too. You know, like I'm not just saying like girls are the only ones that, you know, deserve love and affection. Um, yeah, I just feel like a lot of the energy that I was putting in was not being like put back. But, and I don't want to say I settled, but in a way I kind of did. And yeah, that's pretty much the episode, guys. So I really have gone through my whole list of things that I wanted to talk about, if I'm going to be honest. And I hope that by the end of this, I didn't offend anybody because that was not my intent or purpose. But thank you guys again for all the love and all the support with the podcast. And I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, your night, your morning. You know, it's clearly nighttime here. So, and I will say though, I'm very happy with all the support. Like truly, like I know I've said it a lot, but truly it means everything to me. And I'm very, very, very excited for you guys to see what comes next because I have some very exciting plans for the upcoming few episodes. So definitely stay tuned and definitely keep listening and watching to Study Break. And it's officially now live. You can hear it now, not just on YouTube, but also on Spotify. And be sure to also follow our social media. And I'm going to have all of that linked in the caption below so you guys don't get bombarded with so many things on the screen. So, yeah. Anyways, bye guys. Mwah.